Fascist propaganda and gamer streamer should not be saying the same things.
Now, whatever your opinion of modern art may be, it's a very weird take to call someone dumb or a fascist for disliking modern art.
Charlie is just being a useful idiot for that agenda.
Now, since fighting fire with fire is always right, I want to tackle Ethan's video and poke some fun at his bad takes. Now, Ethan isn't really the most liked in this space, and there have been countless videos dunking on him for his awful takes, and this will be another one to add to that pile. Now, I have a confession to tell you. I like some modern art, but I am pretty sure you also do. Now, do these paintings look familiar? You may not know this, but Van Gogh essentially invented modern art. So how do we go from this to this? With some people claiming that this rock is essentially a godsend of modern sculpting.
It's actually called levitated mass, if you even care. It's not just a rock that you look at, like others. It's a sculpture that you walk under. Standing directly beneath tens of thousands of pounds of rock, older than anything around it, suspended just enough by these small brackets. That is art.
Good art is subjective, and you can find meaning and beauty and purpose in pieces that people would find bad. But just because someone doesn't have the same sexual fantasies about the rock that you have, you will hit them with the most infuriating line of, you just don't get it. Ethan just embodies the biggest problem people have with modern art, that being the snobbyism around it. Now, his video is 40 minutes long, and since your attention span is roughly the one of a goldfish, I will condense some of this shit. But if you all would like me to make a more long-form video where I go more to depth and I yap a lot more, let me know. Without further ado, let's jump into this shitstorm.
All art is inherently political, either in its influences, messages, or implication. 101, guys, this is baby stuff.
Now, that's just wrong. A shit ton of art has no political intent behind it, and instead it focuses on other areas like philosophy, introspection. But Ethan is just trying to make himself a nice little segue so he can make cheap shots at conservatives.
Conservatives are so artistically and creatively bankrupt, people let right-wing propaganda cloud their judgment of modern art.
He is talking about a PragerU video, which I don't agree with overall, but as with Ethan's video, there are merits in both, no side is fully correct. The PragerU video has shit takes, and so does Ethan. Somehow both sides are like, oh, you are so stupid, oh, you are so stupid. This entire argument can be summed up with, that meme with two people with like small brain talking, and the one big brain, you and me, the cornstarch viewers.
The profound, the inspiring, and the beautiful were replaced by the new, the different, and the ugly.
Nah, new art style's ugly. I mean, that's mad.
The new modernists sowed the seeds of aesthetic relativism, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder mentality.
Ah, yes, the art expert here to tell us that art can be scientifically measured and is objective.
Standards declined until there were no standards. All that was left was personal expression.
I don't really have anything to say other than this is just a fake graph that means nothing.
Now, first off, yes, that graph could have been way more descriptive. If you know something about modern art history, then you probably know that that's probably when contemporary art was on the rise. But basically the gist of this part of the video is Robert Florchak says, art can be measured, and Ethan is like, no, it cannot, but both of them make a shit ton of bad takes.
How can art be objectively measured? In responding, I simply point to the artistic results produced by universal standards compared to what is produced by relativism.
His first example is Birth of Venus, which I don't know about that one. I don't get it. Waves don't even look like that. What is this supposed to be? Compositionally, little crowded, very flat. The anatomy is stiff and dull, just like the colors.
Now, it seems crazy to me that Ethan says that he gets art, but yet he doesn't really understand the intention behind the painting. Obviously, the interpretations are extremely different based on who you ask and your perspective, but the waves are designed to be that way. The entire background is supposed to be flat, so your attention is drawn to Venus, who is the Roman god of beauty and perfection and love and shit like that. The poses that Ethan described as stiff were actually graceful, which would make sense since she is the god of that. So Ethan, when you claim to get art, maybe actually get it. Now, will I be such a dickhead to other people who misinterpret art? No. Will I be that way to Ethan? Yes.
Florchak does not bring up a single actual example of modern art for the rest of the video, just a bunch of poop-related stuff that he made up. Robert does have a solution for you, though, if you're really frustrated about the modern art problem. His call to action paragraph at the end tells you to patronize the right kind of art galleries and buy the right kind of artwork at the galleries.
By the art we patronize at museums or purchase at galleries, We can make our opinions not only known but felt. An art gallery, after all, is a business like any other.
What won't sell won't get made. That is, like, not even how the world works.
Now, I genuinely don't know how Ethan missed Economy 101 and the entire laws of supply and demand, but yes, Ethan, if there is less demand for stuff, the supply will lessen. Now, in the video, Ethan moves on to a very complex topic of what defines good art, which is definitely a very subjective question, and my answer won't be the same as your answer. So, let us see how Ethan, evolves this topic.
Robert claims that art is a visual medium and how it looks matters more than anything else.
The great artists of the past didn't care one whit about reflecting their times. They cared primarily about creating art that looked good. Art, by definition, is a visual medium. Therefore, its meaning and ability to make you think are secondary to how it looks.
That's really stupid. Because art is a visual medium, it can convey things that are indirect through a visual format, right? I feel like that makes more sense than whatever the fuck he just said. But also, to make a broader point, art isn't a medium. Painting is, drawing is, charcoal is. Those are visual media, but art is not.
How do you focus on the only correct part of the whole incorrect statement? Art, if you see it, it's a visual medium. Now, coming from Robert, he is completely fucking wrong.
The great artists of the past didn't care one whit about reflecting their times.
Artists nearly always try to reflect their times, or try to give some insight into something. My favorite painting of all time is Steincheck, which you probably know from the memes. Do you know what that represents? It's time! The key takeaway is that the person who's supposed to bring fun, silly goofy times, the jester, he is the only one depressed for the situation that's going on, for the war that's going on in Poland. Meanwhile, the kings are like, yippee! That's the key takeaway. The key takeaway is that the people are sad while the kings are happy. Jesus! If this was a basketball match, they're dunking, but only on themselves. There is no points that are actually going to the other hoop. Ethan, how did you not go into that? How? To give credit, he did mention something about that briefly, but he focused on the completely wrong part, which is so bizarre to me.
They assumed that looking photographic was the purpose of a painting. But that was never the goal of the classical artist. Quality of execution was.
Whatever that means.
Much of today's art exposes how coarse and vulgar a society we've become.
Much unlike 1400s Europe, a very clean and civilized time. Alright, no more Robert. Charlie time.
Alright, this is where Ethan completely loses me. The things he said against Robert had some merit, but him coming off incredibly condescending towards Moist Critical for just disliking modern art, it's really weird.
For those of you who don't know who this is, he is just a YouTuber.
How to understand a Jackson Pollock painting, as if you're too fucking stupid to get it.
But you don't understand it, though. Is that not your problem? You don't get it.
As he himself says, he wants to make people enjoy modern art.
And it helped change my mind a lot about modern art. I think it would even change someone like Charlie's mind if he actually gave it a fair shot.
He's doing the exact opposite of what he wants to do. You're supposed to encourage and, let them have their own opinions, not just chastise them and say, you don't get art, bro. You don't get it. Bro, who cares? Just have some fun with it. Now, multiply the video, the fact that Charlie is joking and poking fun at modern art completely goes over, Ethan's head, and he just takes that all at face value and goes, what? That's so infactually based? Jesus, he's making a joke.
Yeah, this pretty much sums up most art exhibits, I imagine.
What does that mean? It's not. He mentioned selling the paintings for 50 grand.
Here's some canvases that there's some scribbles on it somewhere in there. I don't know, just hanging up, put 50 grand on it. Someone's gonna buy it.
But where did 50 grand come from? He just made that up. There is no record that this piece has ever been sold or ever had any offers on it. And when someone points out in the chat that all art is subjective, he says this.
Annually.
Art is always subjective. Yeah, until it comes to Damien Hirst or Jackson Pollock, then it is objectively dog shit.
Which, I'm not the biggest Hirsch head in the world, but Pollock? Really? Pollock's work is often extremely misrepresented. He painted what hell looks like. This is the real hell.
It's just abstract dog shit that even a child could make.
And yeah, if a child had the same mental illness and chronic addiction and somehow got a hold of one of the giant canvases he would nail on the ground, spent hours upon hours splattering paint to cover the entire thing, maybe Charlie's point about kids being able to do the same thing as Pollock would make a little more sense.
I think this starts a great debate of like people saying that some art is easy and some art is hard. And I really dislike Ethan's point of saying, a child can make a Jackson Pollock, because yes, they could. Sure, you can say that a kid can make a Jackson Pollock like Jackson Pollock did, but definitely you can see like what it is. Just a little side note here. A weird thing that Ethan does is that he goes very much into how big the paintings are and how much paint was used to them. Like that was like if that was some kind of characteristic of good paintings.
Giant canvas is really big, perfectly white. Does he see how much paint is on this? And it is a huge paint. And they're all really big. This is actually a canvas painted, splattering paint bigger than what Robert suggests in his video. Is anyone in real life who likes modern art? I don't think he knows any gay people.
God, these people are so fucking pretentious, it hurts.
He doesn't really elaborate, but I'm going to assume that he's saying that it's pretentious to seek meaning in art that looks passable enough.
Yes, it is. But you're allowed to think that, the same way you're allowed to think that some bad art is incredibly meaningful to you. They're allowed to think that art is meaningless. And I think that is kind of like the poetic beauty of it. That you can look at the same art piece and have different opinions of it. But I will say this, I would actually agree with Charlie. And I think that Ethan in some weird ways actually agrees with Charlie, because he says this.
Uninspired art is uninspired art.
And I think that a lot of people actually look at Jackson Pollock's and Mark Rothko's paintings as uninspired, because they don't see the emotion in it. And I think that's a completely fair take, right? And some modern art paintings actually suffer from this, because they are so abstract that they come off as meaningless, because the painting doesn't really push you in a direction to explore it. During the Renaissance and even the early modern art periods, it was kind of way easier to like get into painting and see the artist's intent behind it. But now I think because of like the rise of abstract art, it's kind of difficult to like find that starting position from where you can go into depth of an art piece. Let me explain with an example. Adam and God, you know, the painting where like motherfuckers are reaching out to each other. From the first glance, you can see what it shows. Two people looking. And that gives you like baseline first glance look. Then you look for a second and you see Adam and God. Huh, this is a religious painting. Then you look at it for even more, and you'll see that Adam is barely reaching out, while God is trying to reach out. And then you go into more depth, thinking like, oh, this is an interpretation of like how humanity is detached from God, and God is trying to show signs. And then you go into even more depth, like, you know, looking at it from your own perspective, maybe like doing some personal anecdotes. How have you like, how you're maybe like barely reaching out to your goals, which is a completely fair perspective. This is all, you know, extremely subjective. And because the art is easy to understand at first glance, you later are able to get into so much depth because of that. I don't know if I'm just yapping here, but this makes sense in my head, right? And now, because of the ambiguous nature of modern art, it's very difficult to find that starting point so you can go into depth. Sure, you can look for context around the painting, but if I, for example, look at any Mark Rothko's paintings, I really don't see the intention behind it. I do think it's lazy. I can like look at it and really try to find meaning, thinking like, oh, maybe the orange represents warmth, but that really doesn't really work for me. I think, this is my personal opinion here, that an artist should, you know, make it as easy as possible for you to go into depth with a painting, into that, like, you know, deeper understanding of it. And if you come at me like saying, whoa, you just dislike abstract art, yes, I kind of do. Sure, you can find meaning in it. But for me, a symbolist painting is way more thought-provoking than an abstract one. Because even though it's still kind of ambiguous, abstract, and subjective, I still see some kind of intent behind it. I see that I'm, like, you know, being pushed in some sort of thinking around it. Now, Mr. PissyPants Ethan kind of does a very weird thing where he says that Charlie is frustrated at art while he is obviously cracking jokes and smiling, so I don't know what Ethan's trying to accomplish there.
Charlie gets really frustrated at the definition of the word kitsch.
Kitsch is, unlike art, a utilitarian object lacking all critical distance between object and observer.
God, these people are so fucking pretentious, it hurts.
But this is my favorite part of the video. They go into a different art piece of a couple boxes in the synagogue, and Charlie is doing the perfect thing, which is being pretentious about the art, you know, forcing it. And Ethan dislikes it.
exquisite. Like, you have to ask yourself, what's in those boxes? Are we purchasing too much? It's a display of excess. And you see how the boxes aren't all lined up the same? There's a pattern to it. There's order in the chaos. And then you also have to wonder who packed these boxes. Is it Amazon workers that are miserable and you can feel the hate? Is it someone like maybe a home business with a family that packed the... There's just so many things you have to ask yourself. This really is a challenging piece.
And then he doesn't look up what it actually means, and he also doesn't understand even what he's looking at, so none of the jokes really land, because Charlie isn't talking about what's in front of him. He's talking about what he thinks is in front of him. Charlie, you're making a fool out of yourself.
This shows exactly how the rest of the world sees the modern art community. We view you as pretentious, simply because of how you come off. But when someone dislikes modern art, don't be toxic and condescending towards them, because that just further drives everyone away from modern art because of the stigma of the community around it. Nobody likes people that are pretentious, and I think that a lot of the modern art community's problems can be tweaked with just the way they speak. You don't have to come off like, oh, you don't get it, but you could come off in a way like, oh, well, I think this of this painting, but your interpretation is also correct. Whatever you want to see in it, that's good. If it provokes you to some kind of thought, that's great. Be encouraging towards people who look at modern art. Don't make them look for context and meaning in pieces they don't want to, because that's not the point of it. Art, by definition, is supposed to make you feel things. And if it doesn't really encourage you to feel anything, Ethan, you pushing them and shaming them for not getting it just drives them further away. But then Ethan goes into money laundering and art, and then he makes a weird comparison, which I may be misunderstanding, but it seems like he's saying that old art pieces are also used for money laundering, which they really aren't.
Modern art has money laundering happening in it, sure. But classical art is where the money's at. The most expensive painting in the world sat on a Saudi yacht for 2 years.
Old paintings are expensive because people want to, feel like they have a piece of history, and because they have money to fucking burn, so they buy something. Just to tweak their fucking ego and have a pissing contest against every other billionaire. Whilst modern art tends to be expensive because, yes, there is a lot of money laundering involved in it. If you buy a 200k modern art painting, then you pump its price up to 2 million, then you donate it, you have a 2 million tax write-off. So the monetary value of their paintings are kind of different. Now, modern art is a very subjective topic. That's why I would love to hear what you think of it. I genuinely say this. I'm not saying this just boost the algorithm by spamming comments. No, I genuinely understand your point. I actually agree with Ethan that I think it's good that modern art exists. Simply because some people get to enjoy it, and it's in the end it really isn't causing that much harm. Yeah, some snobbery douches are going around, but who cares? As long as they're happy and we get to make fun of them, it's a win-win. Alright, yo, I'll see you in the next video.